All right, wonderful. Well, I'm glad you all are here on this rainy day. It's better to be, I think, on Zoom when the weather is so miserable outside. It looks like October is finally here. So anyways, I want to do a welcome to all of you. So good afternoon and welcome. I hope you all are enjoying this year's Summit on Sustainability. My name is Chris Herman, and I'm a principal with MKSK. As you may know, MKSK is a planning, landscape architecture, and urban design firm with our home base here in Columbus. MKSK has been involved in many efforts in improving biking and walking in Central Ohio, so we are very excited to be the sponsor of today's panel discussion, Anyone, Anywhere, Anytime. Active transportation is one of the most cost-effective and healthy ways to travel. Being able to bike, walk, and move via forms of human-powered transportation represents freedom for people of all ages, abilities, and economic status. Unfortunately, this freedom is hindered by an incomplete network and a lack of community prioritization of its importance, but this is improving. Still, an incomplete network limits the use and potential, thus limiting the benefits of active transportation. Today's session will feature speakers who will provide insight on how the current conditions impact our lives and how future efforts should be implemented to maximize use and benefits for all of us. So I will start by introducing the session's moderator, Catherine Gervas. Catherine is a senior planner in Tool Design's Columbus office. With 2 decades of experience in active transportation, she enjoys helping community leaders understand how accommodating our most vulnerable travelers also forwards the important health, safety, and economic goals that all communities have. She has designed and operated multiple award-winning programs to encourage mode shift and has personally taught hundreds of people to lawfully and joyfully get from one place to another by bike. She is one of our community's bike superheroes. I added that part. Catherine has a long and rich, diverse history of participating in the development and implementation of policies to create communities we all love. Catherine has received numerous local, regional, and national awards for her work in community engagement and transportation, including the WTS Innovate Transportation Solutions Award and the Association of Pedestrian and Bicycle Professionals Nonprofit Professional of the Year. Thank you all again for attending. This discussion is an important one. We've got a great panel, and we're excited to make our region more bikeable and walkable for everyone. Catherine, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank Chris Herman and MKSK for sponsoring this session, but beyond the sponsorship, for the good work that you and MKSK do as part of your business on a day-to-day basis, and the work that you do as a volunteer and an actively engaged civic leader, and just working to create beloved community in this region. I really appreciate you, Chris, and the work that you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
I am delighted to introduce the rest of the panel. These are all people I know and love and am excited to share with the rest of the community. We are going to start with the youngest member of our panel, Dana Dorsey. Dana is the Creating Healthy Communities Program Manager at Columbus Public Health, where she gets to work on physical activity initiatives with a focus on active transportation. She currently serves as the co-chair for 2 neighborhood level coalitions, the Active Linden, Bike Friendly Franklinton, Active Linden and Bike Friendly Franklinton. And each of those are focused on improving the environment and elevating resident voices to make all modes of transportation accessible, safe, and suitable. Dana also serves on MORPC's Community Advisory Committee representing Linden, Franklinton, and her home community of Canal, Winchester. So thank you for being here, Dana. Dana also holds a BS in Urban and Regional Planning from Ohio State University. Go Bucks. Next, oldest is Gino Tucker, who's going to show up on our screen here in just a few minutes. Miguel Gino Tucker is the founder and CEO of Remember Us Urban Scouts, a nonprofit youth development bike club, whose mission is to serve as a hub for resources and services for youth and their families. He is a Columbus resident from the South Linden community, and Gino's mission in life is to empower as many people to see their full potential and connect them to the resources they need to achieve it. And we are excited to have Gino at the table. Next is Helen Rollins. Helen was born and raised in rural southern New Jersey in the town of Bridgeton. She primarily used biking and walking as her primary form of transportation when she lived there. Grew up in a family with her mom and dad had 7 kids, which made it difficult to afford public transportation and an automobile for everybody to travel together at once. And so people had to bike and walk to get to where they needed to go. She continued to use bike as her primary mode of transportation when she came to The Ohio State University, where she is a nationally known athlete in track and field and has a degree in allied health medical professions. She is now the single mother of 4 teenagers living in Reynoldsburg who also use their bikes as their main source of transportation. And in her volunteer life, she serves as a leader for the Columbus chapter of Black Girls Do Bikes, helps other children plan routes to and from school in the Reynoldsburg School District, and is employed at Zane State College, where she is the Director of Clinical Education for the Physical Therapist Assistance Program, and also the Academic Chair of the Health Division, as well as being an instructor. We are delighted to have you here, Helen. We also have Gabby Riesling. Gabby is the Director of Compliance and Risk Management at I Am Boundless, a nonprofit agency with over 30 years of experience working with individuals with disabilities and their families. Prior to I Am Boundless, Gabby served in different capacities from risk management to legal services and compliance activities for Primary One Health. Also at the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center. Her history with OSU spanned 30 plus years, with most of her work in risk management. Gabby also is a nurse because she's one of the hardest working people I know, of course. She received her bachelor in nursing from Capital University School of Nursing and her law degree from Capital Law School, and completed graduate work in compliance from George Washington University, helping her achieve her certification in healthcare compliance. And the orneriest member of our panel is Patrick Casey. Patrick was born in November of 1947. He is the senior in our group. He attended St. Charles High School and the Ohio Dominican College. He's retired from a career in accounting in 2013, is a lifelong resident of Columbus, and took up biking again after a knee replacement surgery in 2012. I met Patrick on a cold October morning in 2017 at a coffee shop, where he just showed up at a coffee shop. And he told me after his double knee replacement surgery, he started riding bike as part of his rehab and just continued because he felt like a 10-year-old again. I have also heard him say more than once that the great thing about riding bikes now that's different than when he's 10 is he can buy his own beer and cigarettes now. So that is Patrick. Welcome all of you to our panel. I'm going to take just a few minutes to set the stage and talk a little bit about what is happening in our region. And to thank those of you who are in attendance. You had a lot of good sessions to choose from. I'm guessing I could be preaching to the choir a bit here, but you know, that's okay. The choir needs to be preached to. I think there are ways in which we need to hear the word, and we also need to think about different ways we can spread the word to other people. So here's what we know. People want to ride. That is clear. The national research makes that clear, that about 60-ish% of the population is interested in riding bikes, but is not yet doing it. When I was with Yay Bikes, we partnered first with Morpsey in 2015 and did some surveys of about a dozen employers in downtown Columbus, employers of different sizes representing different industries. And we found from employees in downtown Columbus, representing executives to dishwashers, that over 60% of people were interested in using their bike to get to work, which was something surprising to us. We worked again with the Ohio Department of Health, delivering surveys to state employees from around the state in 2017, and reached over 10,000 employees who work for the state of Ohio. People not only want to ride, they want to ride for transportation, but they're not yet doing it. So the numbers that we saw reflected nationally are certainly reflected here in Ohio. When the Ohio Department of Transportation did one of their recent user preference surveys, they asked people, how are you currently traveling? How do you anticipate traveling 5 years from now? And how do you wish you could travel to get to the places you need to go? And I think one of the big surprise, it was not at all surprising that car is dominant in the way that people are currently traveling and how they anticipate they will be traveling 5 years from now. But the way people want to travel is by using active transportation. People want to walk, people want to bike, but they're not doing it. There is something amiss in the market being able to do what it wants to do. And I think one of the things that was really interesting with the ODOT user preference survey is we saw that held across age, it held across geography. So we had old folks and young folks saying that. We had rural residents and urban and suburban and ex-urban residents saying that. And it held across educational background. The market is interested in active transportation. So that's the environment we are in. I want to talk for just a few more minutes about, so we have people want to ride, but they're not yet doing it. We've kind of known that for a while, and yet it still has not influenced what we're doing, not just here in Central Ohio, but nationally, to any great degree. So I want to talk briefly about why decision makers should care. Many of you who are participants in this room have to work with decision makers all the time. And I want to lay out a few ways that we should be thinking about making the case. We should be thinking about translating our desire to promote biking or walking for transportation into a language that other people care about, because they may not care about it in the language that we care about. Certainly the health case has been made by many, but I do want to briefly say that the health impacts for people who use active transportation are not just good for the individuals, they are good for entire communities. That we see benefits for walk from one place to another, just from the reduction in carbon emissions, particularly those with asthma and other issues like being very young or very old. Poor air quality really impacts those populations. And so creating conditions where people who want to use active transportation or who need to use active transportation is going to be good for the health of the entire community. Another health piece I want to talk about are crashes. There's some from 2013 to 2017, within the Morpsey region, which is an area of 498,131 people, we had 196,792 crashes reported. Of those, 582 people were fatally injured and another 4,323 suffered serious injuries. Let me put that another way. In an approximate area of Franklin and Delaware County, an average of 273 people were involved in a crash every day for 5 years. Were involved in a crash every day for 5 years. That's more than 2 people experiencing a life-altering crash every day for 5 years. So this is not just about people on bikes. There was some interesting research in June of last year that was published in the Journal of Transport and Health that found that protected and separated bike lanes are strongly linked to lower fatality and injury rates, not just for people on bikes, but for people in cars. Accommodating people on bikes creates safer streets and lower crashes, lower serious injuries and fatalities for all travelers. So those are some other ways we can make the health and safety case. Certainly, there's an environmental case to be made, and that's one we hear a lot about, reductions in fossil fuels, but we don't often talk about the impacts of a changing climate. We are seeing droughts and bigger storms and disruptions in travel that happen, and creating networks where active transportation works when there are times of crises is about keeping goods flowing. There are economic arguments to be made. There are some communities that after a major event where electricity is lost, we're seeing roundabouts show up in communities because you can get through traffic lights. So thinking about how our communities are going to experience disruptions in transportation during large storm events is really about, part of that is about thinking about active transportation. And along those lines, economic development. As we are fortunate to live in the Midwest, where we are certainly going to feel the impacts of a changing climate. The predictions already show more droughts and more severe rain events, but they are nothing compared to what the coastal communities and what some other communities are experiencing as it relates to drought. We have Great Lakes here. That means we are going to become an area. I think all of the Great Lakes communities are going to become areas that are of interest, and we're going to see more growth. And what we know is, with a market that is interested in active transportation, it makes good economic sense to accommodate people who want to bike or walk or use transit, to live car light or car free. We're all beyond the changing preferences and climate issues as it relates to economic development. There are also cases to be made for tourism and for business development. You know, one of the reasons I think we lost Amazon is because we did not have a good active transportation network. We have seen the loss of big conferences because we don't have a good active transportation network in Central Ohio. It is economically impacting our ability to compete with the larger market. And then finally, the thing that is closest to my heart is social justice and equity. We have way too many people in our region who work jobs that do not allow them to, that do not pay them well enough to own, operate, and maintain a car. Those folks still not only need to get from home to work, their kids need to get to school on days when they miss a bus. They need to get to the grocery store. They need to get to the library. They need to get all of the places that people who own cars need to get on a day-to-day basis. And they should not have to put their lives in their hands to just travel to the places that folks need to go. So those are the conditions we're in, and I am excited now to open the conversation up to the group, and Gino will be joining us soon to talk about this, to talk about the experiences. I pulled this group together in part not only because each of the people here represents a different geographic place within the Mordsey region, but all y'all use bikes in one way or another, and all of you also work with people who use bikes. Hey, Gino, it's good to have you back at the table. And I'm really interested in what you have witnessed as people who use bikes and as people who work with other folks who either use bikes or are really interested in using bikes. What gets in the way? What have you seen gets in the way for folks? And Dana, I'm going to start with you.
Thanks, Catherine. And I also have to point out, I graduated from Ohio University, so go Bobcats.
Excuse me.
It's fine. I just have to shout out, go Bobcats. And I love the Buckeyes, so they're still in my heart. And also, I think spending time in Athens has helped shape who I am and who I am as a biker and someone who can appreciate active transportation. So it's important to mention that. But for me personally, and also professionally, I've noticed a ton of things about biking that underscore everything that you mentioned in the introduction, that many people do have a genuine interest, but are afraid and don't feel that biking is for them. So we kind of hear about two classes of bikers. So the first is like that older gentleman, maybe 40s, 50s, usually white, who's wearing like the suit with the lycra and the shorts and has like a souped up bike that does Pelotonia. And then that other class is people who either can't afford a car, don't own a car, or had their license revoked. So now they're riding a bicycle because they have to. But either way, those people in the middle tend to feel like biking isn't for them, even if there is some interest. Then the other side of that coin is the fear. So there's fear of biking on the roads because traffic is too far. There's fear of using trails because they're not well lighted or people are afraid of them. I mean, even personally, when I go on the trails by myself, I have to share my location with my mother because she's super nervous about me being out there. There's just a ton of people who are interested but concerned. They don't know how to use it. They don't know what to do. So I think giving that education is a big step. Again, personally, I've had a lot of people reach out to me on social media when I post my bike saying, hey, I ride the trails. There's only really one trail I ride. And I'll share Central Ohio Greenways, and their mind is kind of blown. So I think giving that education piece that it's possible, that there's trails out there, is what people really want. And then that education that you can ride on the road. You have a right to be there. It's safe to be there. So if that connects you to the trails or gets you where you need to go, I think getting that education and that confidence to do that in people is kind of where we need to start moving until we can start seeing the changes that people have been talking about through this whole conference. Until we start to see those changes happen, we need to get kind of that confidence and that ability in people.
Gino, what have you noticed as you have ridden and as you've worked with other people who are interested in riding or who are riding? What do you think the barriers are for folks?
First off, thank you, Morpsey and Catherine, for having me. One of the main barriers is education. I had to agree with Dana. Our youth and people in the impoverished communities do not understand biking in the aspect of, I just found out it was not legal to ride on sidewalks. You know, our kids are inviting trouble in every time they ride on sidewalks, and they're not even educated enough to know, not educated in the sense that they're not smart, but they're not educated on biking to know that it's not legal to ride ride on sidewalks, as well as we're not confident in riding in the streets. As you know, this is our first time riding in the streets when we did our training with you, Catherine, and that built our confidence. Before then, you know, we stayed on the side streets. Riding on the main street was just too scary for even a adult myself. Coming from that neighborhood, to see them cars flying up and down the streets, to know that it's a lot of accidents that happen in these communities with cars, not even including pedestrians or people on bikes. It was very scary, but after learning it, after riding it and actually being a part of it, our youth and myself became more confident. We rode the coast side, and when I was a kid, we used to ride our bikes everywhere. This new generation is scared, for one, of their safety in riding in these neighborhoods, primarily because they don't know if they're going to end up getting hit by a bullet, getting caught up in the fight or anything in these neighborhoods, because, you know, there's not a lot of safe routes for them to ride on or ride in. And once again, they're not educated enough about where to ride at. So I see biking becoming very popular, as it already has become, but primarily for the kids. For the kids that was in my program, all of them kept their bikes. They all wanted to ride their bikes. They was calling me as soon as graduation was over, like, where's my bike at? I need my bike. So they want to ride. And the first day I seen a kid who gave a bike probably about 7 miles away from the location that I gave him the bike at. And that made me feel proud. Like, you know, transportation is a barrier to a lot of kids. To know that they can use the bike and they learned how to successfully, effectively, and safely ride the bikes in the streets, on the side, not on the sidewalks, but over bridges. Like, we didn't know that you were supposed to walk your bike across a bridge. It's a lot of education pieces that need to be enforced, as well as traffic calming areas to make sure that traffic is actually moving at a safe space for the kids. So that's what I really noticed. Confidence, once riding in groups, your confidence gains. You become more confident just in the capacity of you riding in the group and riding alone. So that's what I've noticed over the time of riding with you and just becoming a rider again. Because I'm normally drive. You know, I'm a driver. If I can get there in 10 minutes, great. But when we did the ride to Easton, I believe we actually made it to Easton quicker than I would have in my car. So that was very interesting to learn. Like, oh wow, you know, these trails can actually provide a quicker, safer, and funner route than driving in the car, and it allows you to experience more. You know, just to calm down in your life, take it slow, catch and notice things that you normally don't notice. So that's some of the things I've noticed about biking.
Thank you. How about you, Helen? What do you see in your community?
Thanks, Catherine. Trying to find that mute button again. I agree with Dana with the fear and the whole typical image. So a lot of stuff that's already been said, I won't piggyback on it again, but being in Reynoldsburg and helping the students from elementary to high school try to get to their schools safely and to know that they should not ride on the sidewalks, but to be on the road. I actually get pushback from the Reynoldsburg busing system, actually. So, because what they say is, well, if you start teaching all these kids, they're not going to need the bus. They don't need the buses, then people aren't going to have a job, or we're not going to have routes. But then winter comes, they're going to need these buses again. So we don't really, and I said, well, no, they can bike in the winter too. And they said, well, more than likely they won't. They might not have the gear to. So I get a lot of pushback from the busing system. When I go to the schools and I say, I'm here to help. And I usually get emails saying that's going against what we provide them already for free. Mm-hmm. So that is true. So it is free. They make a lot of valid points, but it doesn't give those students freedom.
Right.
If you think about having to be at the bus stop an hour before you need to be, they're being sleep deprived, missing time to get homework done, can't get an adequate breakfast in their bellies because they're rushing off to the bus stop an hour and a half before they need to be in school. So these students can now, when I tell them you get to sleep in longer, they're sold. I get to sleep in an extra 45 minutes, Miss Helen? I'm like, yep, because you can get to school in 15 minutes. So it's fighting the administration on my end. Mm-hmm. And then in Zanesville, where I commute, there's a lady named Brenda Hoffman that they have a ride for and a fundraiser every year. Her and her husband were training for, forget what they were training for. Anyway, they got hit by a car. He survived, she did not. So every year in Zanesville, there's this awareness or fundraiser for that family, for her, Brenda Hoffman. But when it's attached to fear and to an accident, no one wants to promote biking when we're doing a fundraiser because someone got killed. Right. So you're fighting a lot of variables, actually, and you're in a small town community where biking is not, you got rolling hills. Most people probably wouldn't bike longer than just to get down Maple Avenue or to go to a grocery store because of the hills. I mean, that's a lot of climbing in Zanesville. But when you attach biking to a horrific event, it is hard to bring the community to support biking because it's attached to fear. because the lady got killed. Her husband was in an accident, TBI, spinal cord injury. So it's just hard to relate those two. So I agree with the previous two panelists, in addition to the administration from the school system, and of course, basing fundraising or awareness to biking when you attach it to a horrific accident.
That's helpful. Thank you. Gabby, what do you notice with yourself and the people that you work with?
So I think there's that element of fear that everyone talks about. The younger people are fearful of being hit by a car, and everyone's fearful of that. And you have to teach them, if you've got to know the basics of being on that road, be visible, be predictable. You just have to be there. And I was fearful. And I have to thank you, Captain, for putting us out there on whatever road we had to be on, to get to learn how to ride. But I can tell you, I can't get out of my neighborhood. I would love to commute more often, and I do commuting, but I get my bike, attach it to the car, drive somewhere and park, and then get on the bike path. And so getting out of my neighborhood is very difficult. I'm surrounded by 3 major roads with no bike lanes and the freeway. So it's hard to get out of the neighborhood. And I think that's what a lot of people experience. Plus, there's not a lot of people who know what the rules are for biking on where I'm from, on the West Side. The West Side have people, the bikes are coming at you, they're coming around you, they're coming everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, Patrick, what have you noticed?
Well, I'm kind of lucky in some ways because I do most of my riding in the Bexley area. And I'm really struck by this conversation and some other conversations I've seen in particular with the panel that was on at 1:15 about the trail system, which is great, north and south, the Olentangy north and south, the Allen Creek north and south. But there was some discussion, quite a bit of discussion about Central High Greenways looking at connecting neighborhoods to trails. I think that's really important. The things that Gabby was talking about, I think there are neighborhoods, and I'm not an expert on this because I haven't ridden everywhere in the city, but you can just drive through the city and see that, my gosh, there's no way in the world I could get on my bike and go to this Kroger without, fearing for my life. There's no way I could go to this theater. I could go to even get to this post office. In certain areas of the city where there's just absolutely no infrastructure and not even room for a little bike lane. And the most striking example for me is I live close to Cassidy Avenue, and I can go up Cassidy through Bexley, and it's golden. You cross those railroad tracks at just north of Fifth Avenue to south of Fifth Avenue, and you're taking your life in your hands because there's absolutely no berm, no place to ride. Excuse me, except for side streets, and they're in such disrepair, you're probably going to blow a tire just getting on a side street. It's crazy. One other thing, we mentioned Lycra. When I first got my bike, the neighbors passed around a petition. I'm not allowed to wear Lycra when I ride. Just want to throw that out there. But yeah, my point is there seem to be pockets where people really know about biking and you feel pretty safe. I think everybody in Bexley is, in fact, the drivers are almost overcautious with the bikes. So I feel pretty safe there. But I can go into my old neighborhood where I grew up on the other side of Fifth Avenue, and it's another one. I may as well go halfway around the world. So I think that education, along with just infrastructure, they sort of go hand in hand. And one more thing, Gino was talking about the kids on bikes. I love that you're doing that with young kids. I've read some of the stuff about you online, and my hat's off to you, my friend.
Gino and Dana, there were a couple of questions online about bike giveaway, helmet giveaway. People wanted to know more about the work that you all are doing with kids, and in particular, kids who might not be able to afford not just the bike and the helmet, but like keeping it maintained. What sort of advice do you have for people from other communities about what you've seen works? And Dana, why don't you go ahead and start? Or Gino, you're off mute. Doesn't matter to me.
You got us playing musical mics. So my program is, like I said, we're a bike club for youth. And during COVID, we realized that the youth had no opportunities to go to work and was not able to actually receive any money. You know, they had unemployment for the adults, but they didn't have nothing set up for the youth. So my organization put together a 5-week training program for landscaping, where we paid the youth $13.50 an hour to work 20 hours a week for 5 weeks in areas around civic engagement, biking, and landscaping. They provided free landscaping services for 25 low-income families in the Linden community, registered 125 people at the vote, completed 100 absentee request ballots, as well as informed 300 residents about the census. So that's kind of what our program did over the course of the 5 weeks. And our lovely partner, Franklinton Cycle Works, donated all the bikes to our 23 kids. As well, year to date, Franklinton has given us 85 bikes to give away to the community. We will also be doing another giveaway for Christmas. This year it's getting worked out right now, but any kid that comes into our program receives a tablet, a bike, because we want to make sure they have access to anything they need to do online as well as transportation. So that's kind of where I leave it at. And we received helmets from Columbus Public Health, and I'll let Dana talk more about it.
Yes, thank you, Gino. So we work together quite a lot, particularly in Linden. And we did help provide helmets through our Safe Routes to School program, which is led by Safety Swig. She is amazing and is really changing like the landscape when it comes to walking and biking and safety from our kiddos, particularly in Columbus City schools, but it ends up branching out to the entire community. So we do have helmets available. If you want those, I can give the email of my supervisor, Scott Ulrich, and he can help you get some free helmets. Some other things we've been doing through our coalition work. So we have Active Linden in the Linden community, which is working to make walking, biking, physical activity safer in that community. We have a youth and biking subgroup led by Gino and Swid, who's looking to collect data to see what information we have on what's safe in the community, routes that kids can take, specifically what hubs are in the community for safety for kids. So if there is a kid out there who ends up in an unsafe situation, whether that's due to community violence, a bike that's broken down, what have you, where can they go? How can they get there? So helping to build those routes, helping to equip the kids that are in Gino's program and beyond with bike education. So a handful of the kids in Gino's program not only know how to ride on the road, but know how to train others to ride on the road. So how to share that information with the youth around them, with their family members. We are also looking to help promote KOGO in the neighborhood, which is for those who are 18 and older, but it's also a way to help people get around. They also have an equity program that just launched. So if you check out KOGO, you can use that and helping them to connect to other KOGO stations around and really utilizing it as a tool, not just for fun, not just for something to ride around downtown or ride around the community and look, but really utilize it to help you get around and get where you need to go. We also have another coalition, Bike Friendly Franklinton, that's chaired by myself and also Jonathan Youngman with Franklinton Cycle Works, which is a co-op, bike shop in Franklinton, who they are doing amazing work with Gino's program and just in the Franklinton community. It's really a hub for not just biking, but again, that feeling of safety and community. It's a place, you know, that you can walk into to feel safe, whether that's safe on your bike or just safe, period. There's resources there. And in that community, we're also working with the Safe Routes to School program to have walking school buses. So we have a walking school bus at Avondale Elementary. We're also working with them to have a voucher program where kids who are already biking can go get their bike fixed. One thing that we've heard in Linden and Franklinton is there's a bunch of bike giveaways that always happen, but it's like a lot of organizations have noticed they'll see like 30 kids, 100 kids get a bike, and then you never see youth on bikes. So some of the reasons you don't see that is maintenance. So people don't know how to change a tire, how to fix a popped chain. And then after that happens, you never see them on the bike, or the bike just lays. So like Gino, Franklin Cycle Works are working to get that bike maintenance education in the hands of kids and parents so that they can continue to bike.
I want to add to that for folks who are unfamiliar with the co-op system. There are co-ops all across the country, and a bike co-op is typically a non-profit bike shop who's has two missions. One is to get bikes into the hands of people who need them, and so they take donated bikes and volunteers fix those up, and they're either sold for very low cost, or people can volunteer in the co-op and put sweat equity towards earning a bike. So that's a way to get the machines out to people. But then maintenance is the other really big part of a co-op, is helping people learn to maintain their own bikes and having a space where all the tools you need to maintain your own bike exist. If you are in a community within Central Ohio that doesn't have access to a co-op, I think Columbus is unusual in that we have 3 co-ops, strong co-ops in Columbus. There's Franklinton Cycle Works, Bikes for All People on the south side, and then the original co-op in town, Third Hand Bike Co-op, which is in the Milo Grogan neighborhood, all which really help serve those communities. We have seen a surprising number of co-ops started by faith groups who consider it part of a health ministry or part of a social justice ministry. And so oftentimes people don't think of churches or mosques or temples as places to partner with when it comes to thinking about biking, but those are potential partners if you're looking to build a co-op in your neighborhood. And then I know the Ohio Department of Transportation partners with the Pediatric Association to do an annual grant program where you can apply for helmets to give away as part of your community programming. And so those can be a couple of resources as you're thinking about what, if you're not in Columbus, what you might want to do in your communities, things that might not exist. So Helen and Gabby, as folks who are really active in Black Girls Do Bike, what are some of the things that you have noticed working with Black women and the other folks who come out to the Black Girls Do Bike rides about what's made a difference for people feeling included in part of a community?
I would, from an older woman's perspective, I didn't start biking again. I stopped probably at 16 when I got my driver's license. Never picked it up again until after I retired from OSU. And from an older person's perspective, it's the fear of falling, because when you fall, something will break. And so I work with the C group with Black Girls Do Bike. And these are people who bought a bike, who cares where they bought it from, but they can get maybe 1 mile, maybe they can get a half a mile, and it's okay. We go back. They need the encouragement to say, just get on it. We'll see how far we get. We're not going to be fast. We're not going to try to compete with people who have been doing this for years. We're just going to go where we need to go and start on the bike path where it's a safety place for them. And someone there to fix the tire if it gets flat. Someone there to say, take my bike, I'll walk your bike, you know. You just have to give a lot of encouragement and know that just because it says Black Girls Do Bike does not mean you have to be Black. You don't have to be a girl. We have everyone that is riding in Black Girls Do Bike.
Helen, is there anything you would add to that?
No, Gabrielle's pretty much summed it up. She's so good when it comes to encouraging ladies that are not familiar with biking, and just learning a lot of her techniques, your techniques, and encouraging people, because I come from a totally different spectrum. You know, I come from, as an athlete, and everything was competition, and everything was about how much can I get done. So becoming part of this organization and then going through the Yay Bikes just gives you a different mindset of a different group of people that want to bike. I think my fit in Black Girls Do Bike is more about safety when we're out on the road, doing cycling, making sure that we are, even though we do share the road and we have every right to be there, there's still a safety component. Just like if you're in a vehicle, there's still defensive driving, offensive driving, protective driving. So the same thing is on the cyclist. As we bicycle, there's still safety things that we have to be mindful of. And there's energy conservation, teaching women how to last a very long time on the bike if they have to, of energy conservation, what to eat, what to drink, health things like that I bring to the table. But Gabrielle's role is so important to that organization, because once they're hooked, they're hooked. But we got to get them hooked first. And sometimes on my end of the spectrum, it could be a little bit more intimidating if they only know about someone that's cycling all these hundreds of miles or riding this fast. That's not an attractive piece for someone that just wants to bike a half a mile or in a mile. So I just appreciate all that Gabrielle does to that organization. It's greatly appreciated.
Patrick, you mentioned the Cassidy Avenue, and our county engineer Robertson sent me a little note that that's an area that the Franklin County Engineer's Office is studying, Cassidy from 670 to Agler, to look at lanes or shoulders, intersections, drainage, that the types of things that are needed to put in pedestrian and bicycle facilities. What are your thoughts, all y'all, about, we've talked a lot about education, we've talked about a lot about encouragement, and those are so key. Like, we can get people riding right now if we had investment to like really push that out to the region. But what are your thoughts about engineering and the role that plays in the area? And Gino, I see you. We'll go right to you first.
One of my major thoughts is it'd be more encouraging, and the youth and young adults would feel more confident in riding if they knew they was riding too. Especially when it comes to rec centers, libraries, and frequently visited places by youth. We need to have bike routes that directly take them to them routes. And some of them should be off of the main roads, you know, because all the kids are not going to feel confident their first couple years riding in the streets, especially if they didn't see one of their friends get hit by a car or anything that has happened traumatic to them around biking, or just in general with a car accident. They're not going to want to hit that main road. So if we can get really invested into alternate routes that are kid friendly, that are leading them to the places that they need to go, that they want to go to, that's where I would love to see the engineering go to, as well as, you know, more calming, street calming going on in these heavily trafficked or heavily accident areas. So that way people don't feel so confident in doing 60 down Cleveland Avenue, or people don't feel so confident doing 60 down Weber Avenue or Hudson Avenue. And the kid that think they got enough time to make it because they see the light about to turn red starts walking, and that car is going so fast it can't stop. Or a kid doesn't even see that car about to run a light, and the light turned green, and the kid is riding across the street in the street and get hit by the car. So definitely like a lot of alternate routes that connect everywhere. So if I want to ride to the trails from Douglas Rec or from the new Linden Rec, I have a safe route to take to get to the trails, and I'm not piecing together which part of the route I'm gonna go to because I feel unsafe.
Thank you. Other people have thoughts on what needs to happen from an engineering perspective? Dana?
Yes. So I think kind of going back off of what Gino said and what Patrick mentioned earlier is really looking at those east-west connections to trails. That's something we've heard about a ton, especially in Linden. But we know it's a problem really everywhere. Really just those ways to get from my doorstep on my bike to a trail. There's not an easy way. When I don't particularly want to, put my bike in a car and drive. So building those out, I think building equitable infrastructure, which Patrick really hit on earlier, that the bike infrastructure is extremely different depending on what neighborhood you're in. And it's interesting that a lot of the communities that do have lower car ownership tend to have less bike infrastructure or have those streets that feel like super highways that are built to make drivers feel like they can go 60, like Gino said. But then we see other neighborhoods that do have bike lanes, that do have protected bike lanes, or even sharrows, which I know that's kind of like a touchy thing. But just building out that infrastructure in neighborhoods that have low car ownership or that have a history of redlining and poverty. So just making sure that that is equitable. And also, I think something to culminate really everything Gino said, what Patrick said, complete streets policy. So implementing those policies and following them, policies that make the road suitable for all users. Including bikers, walkers, and cars, which does include, like Gino mentioned, that traffic calming. So ways to make the streets usable and safe for everyone.
To
Catherine, this
piggyback
is
on what
Susan.
Dana's,
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to give the 5-minute notice for the session.
Okay.
Go ahead, Helen.
piggyback on what Dana was saying, it's almost like a surgery. You have the orthopedic surgeon in place, you have the doctor in place. They're going to make all these decisions about the, operating on the patient, but the patient's never in the room. We don't have the people that need to be on those roads, part of these discussions and panels that need to use these roads. And they're the ones that are being affected. So we have these engineers that are designing these things, which they're brilliant. However, are the voices being heard of what's needed in that area to make it conducive before operation takes place? Their voice isn't heard. Or there are people that bike or have a biking mindset on those committees that build the infrastructure, and really just making sure we're hearing the needs of that community. When I went to Zanesville, that's why I was told, Helen, no one bikes to work here, too many hills. I'm like, makes sense. So if the community doesn't want it, why build it? But they do want to bike down Maple Avenue to get to and from the restaurants, but there's no biking lanes. So just knowing what the community needs with all parties involved, I think will be beneficial too.
And Catherine, one last thing, I think vernacular is very important. I think when you see that sign that says share the road, it says to a driver, you're doing something gratuitous to the rider on a bicycle. But the signs that say bicycle may use full lane, or bicycles are present, or any other kind of language that lets people know bicycles are equal, would help out instead of share the road.
Well, and I think there's a lot more that can be said about wayfinding. I've heard you all talk about that before. One of the things that I'm taking away from this conversation is we need a holistic look at solutions. We need engineering solutions that include appropriate investment and community input, so that what we're doing is what makes sense for a particular community. We need investment in educational campaigns and encouragement campaigns. And in particular, I don't know that anyone said it overtly, but I have heard each of you say this before and have witnessed it. It matters who's leading those educational what people look like. People need to see people who look like them and in leadership roles, and we need to invest in encouragement. And I think along with, like, we often talk about evaluation as a component, and I think a huge part of evaluation is, like, if we've done the community engagement well, we are likely to come up with programming that works better, that suits our needs, and have evaluation tools that are meaningful to communities. I really appreciate the leadership that each of you has in this area and in helping to make the community more bike friendly. I want to thank MORPC. I want to thank MKSK for sponsoring this panel to bring us all here. And Stephen, I'll let you offer any last words you'd like to offer as the person who brought us all together.
I just want to again thank everyone for participating. This was a really helpful and just helpful in so many ways discussion to hear, and want to take some things, a lot of things that we heard in this discussion, and move forward with efforts in the region. And this is a continuing discussion, and it's already started. It's evolved so much from last year and the year before and the year before. So I'm really excited about the future of active transportation in the region. And again, thanks to all of our panelists. Thanks to MKSK and Catherine. Huge thanks to you for moderating and pulling this all together. And that's all I got. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the summit. Don't forget tomorrow, there are still panels tomorrow. And have a great day.